The Houston Chronicle reported that the Texas DPS officers on the border have been ordered to push small children and nursing babies on the Rio Grande back into the river and told not to give water to asylum seekers. Is this true? And what is your reaction to an email that the Chronicle reported from a trooper calling this inhumane and that these policies need to change?
Jack, to be candid with you, I have seen the article, but I'm not aware of the email. It's not been brought to my attention personally or in my position as Lieutenant Governor of the state. But of course, we'll look into that. And it's an email, as I understand, from someone on the border to someone at DPS, and we'll just have to look into it.
Is it concerning to you?
Of course, it would be concerning to me. At the same time, Jack, I will tell you that the reason we put up concertina wire and the reason we're putting the buoys in the river is to stop people from coming. At the last year of Trump, we had the border under control. About 400,000 people or so were apprehended on the border. About 2/3 of those in Texas, because the border is 1,900 miles from San Diego to Brownsville. We're about 1,250 miles of that part. And then in the first year of Biden, it's been 2 million apprehended, or near 2 million every year, plus the gotaways, hundreds of thousands, plus, Jack, the ones we never see who cross the border. So we cannot absorb this influx of people coming here illegally into our state and into our country. We used to spend, every time I would write the budget in the past, up until Biden came into office, we spent about 800 million on the budget. We do a 2-year budget, 400 million a year. And this past budget is 4 billion of our Texas taxpayer money. There is nothing wrong with protecting your country and protecting your state. Obviously, you want to do it in a humane way, but it's look, Joe Biden, anyone who drowns in the river, anyone who is thrown into sex slavery, any criminal that crosses the border, which they do, and all those things I just described happen every day. It's Joe Biden's fault. He said, keep coming, just keep coming. He doesn't really care if babies are drowning in the river. He doesn't care if people are put into child or sex slavery as a young girl. He doesn't care that the #1 killer of Americans under 45 is fentanyl. So this all goes back to him. We're just trying to protect our state, protect our country the best of our ability when the federal government's not doing the job. But of course, we want to do everything we do in the most humane way that we possibly can.
Another story that made headlines was the gag order that you issued yesterday in the Paxton impeachment trial. Why was that necessary in your mind?
So I'm under an order of the impeachment rules that the Senate passed 25-3 about a month ago. And so I can't talk too much about the trial, only what's been in the public arena, which we published the rules and we put out our press release yesterday, and we posted our website. By the way, anyone wanting to stay up to date on the trial before the trial and once it begins on September 5th can go to LTGOV, Lieutenant Gov, ltgov.texas.gov, and they can see what's happening every day on the motions that are filed before the trial, et cetera. So the reason I put the gag order out, Jack, was that both sides have been making inflammatory comments, and I'm saying what I said in my press release, so I'm staying inside my guidelines and my rules that I have on me. Both sides have been saying some rather inflammatory things. Think about this, Jack. In a normal trial, you have a jury pool, and you select from that jury pool. Our jury pool is 31 senators. They will be set according to the Constitution. So in a normal trial, if someone is prejudiced potentially by something they've read or heard or seen, well, they could be excused from the jury. And so I have to protect the jury. I have to keep this a fair trial. The defendant deserves a fair trial. And so the reason for the gag order is to get people on both sides to step back and not be talking about this case moving forward, or not be leveling any accusations from either side. And that's the reason for the gag order.
I wanted to ask you about a Texas Tribune report this morning that your campaign reported a $1 million contribution and a $2 million loan from the group Defend Texas Liberty PAC, which has been critical of the impeachment and has defended Attorney General Ken Paxton. What do you say to Texans who may be concerned about that and your previous call and continued call for impartiality in the trial?
Well, Jack, there are people on many sides of this case who contribute to senators and to my campaign. And so we will all take a oath of impartiality, and that's not an issue whatsoever. Um, the the issue really here is for me as the presiding officer and the judge is to have a fair trial. And I think, Jack, that what you've seen um, by what we've done so far has really amazed a lot of people. Many thought we might just dismiss it. Well, we're bound by the Constitution to do so, to have the trial. And if you did dismiss it, it would go back over there and the House could hold it for a year or two, who knows? And Attorney General Paxton would still not be able to work. So we will take it on, but we've been, again, I'm staying under my orders here. I'm talking about the rules that we passed, 31 rules, Jack, voted on 25-3 by the Senate, but there were a few senators missing during that time. But those rules are very clear, and we're going to have a fair trial, and the defense will have a chance to make their case, and as will the House managers who created this impeachment. So, Jack, we're all moving forward. The 12 Democrats, the 19 Republicans, everyone will take that oath.
I did have one other quick question on that.
Sure.
How concerned are you about the outside influence on senators, particularly Republican senators, who are going to be the jurors in this case?
Well, I don't think you should separate it out into Republican or Democrats. And Jack, I'm under impeachment rules not to discuss the case. So I'm not going to discuss that or my opinions of what's happening on the outside. My gag order that I issued yesterday as the judge of this trial is very clear that obviously there is a concern. So if you read the gag order, which I know you have, and people can go to ltgov.texas.gov and read that and all the other motions and all of the rules. People ask me all the time about what's happening, how's this happening. All the rules are published for this trial. And so that's how I answered. That was reason for the gag order. Of course, there's would be concern there.
Want to ask you about the property tax cut deal
Yes.
that was
Finally, to the biggest news of ever in the history of the country in terms of property tax relief. But go ahead.
Well, I wanted to ask you, is this something that the state can sustain? And when we've seen these kind of deals before, property taxes for schools have crept back up. How will the state try to keep that from happening this time?
So, Jack, I know you always do this full length on your podcast, I guess, or you post it online. This is a great opportunity for me to answer that question in long form because you don't have enough time on television for me to explain it in a 2-minute story. But Jack, here's the deal. What you just said, you're absolutely right. It used to be that way in the old days. Appraisals went up and whatever tax relief you received kind of disappeared. That's the way it was 15, 20 years ago, even as recent as 5 or 6 years ago. What we did in 2019, Jack, was we separated for the first time ever your appraisal that comes out in the spring and your tax bill, which comes out in October or November. Before that, whatever your appraisal went up, if it went up 7 or 8 or 9%, you could pretty much count on your tax bill going up the same. The local entities never cut the taxes back, even though the values went up. So today, Jack, and if you, and I challenge all of your viewers too, and there's always an exception to the rule, but if you go back and look in 2021, go back a year, look at what your appraisal was in the spring, and then what was your tax bill. And you'll see that your tax bill was much less than your appraisal, almost in all cases. In fact, the Houston Chronicle wrote an article that for the first time in decades, property taxes for schools actually went down for many people or flat or only up a little bit. And it's because, Jack, we have capped the growth of budgeting in school districts to 2.5%. They can't grow any more than 2.5% from year to year. And cities and counties cannot grow any more than 3.5% from year to year unless the people vote for higher taxes. So what happens as the value goes up, see it as a seesaw, your value goes up. By the way, everybody wants to sell their house for more than they paid for it. It's not a bad thing. You just don't want to be taxed on it. So as your value goes up, Jack, they have to lower the tax rate to get the seesaw down to no more than 3.5 on average or 2.5 at the schools. And so the appraisals are not the factor. They're essentially not a factor at all. And again, this year, people have gotten their appraisals this past spring, a few months ago. Wait till October, November, and compare the two. So that's the reason, Jack, what we're doing now will not, the homestead never goes away. People will vote on that $100,000 homestead exemption which you know that I and the Senate fought for. We never took one step back on that because it's huge, Jack. So if you live in the average $300,000 home in Texas, which is 3 to 330,000, that's the average home. So now you're going to be paying school taxes on a $200,000 home. And by the way, Jack, for 397 school districts out of 1,014 in the state, for 397 districts, the average value, Jack, of the homes in those districts are $100,000, mostly rural, small counties, small towns. So that means their school property taxes are disappearing, going away. And the tax bill that you're going to get, Jack, and every one of your viewers, with this bill that Senator Paul Betancourt passed and the entire Senate, myself worked on hard for years, but particularly this session, and we never backed up from it. It's cutting your school taxes, Jack, 41%. 41%, unheard of. And for business properties, 23%. And so that will be in the Constitution when people vote on it in November. That will be in the Constitution. That always has to be funded. The compression piece, which is actually reducing the school rate, that depends on the sales tax flow we have any given year. But I believe, Jack, what we're doing, we can maintain moving forward. And so I'm comfortable with where we are. And look, Jack, when I came into the Senate in 2007, to give you a sense of things, how fast we've grown, and inflation along the way, really high under Biden, but it goes up every year. When I came in, Jack, the first budget from memory in 2007 was 165 billion. That's a 2-year budget. This year was 300 billion or more. That's how much we've grown, Jack. So you absorb what you don't ever, like the surplus. You don't want to stack everything into ongoing cost. So we were very careful about that. What you want to do is put a lot of that money into one-time costs. Like we created the new Texas University Fund for $3 billion, one time. Put $1 billion into Parks and Wildlife to buy land, one time. So you do one-time things that you don't have to maintain, and then you do other things that you do have to maintain, and you try to keep those in that area that we can support ongoing.
I wanted to ask you, people were surprised by the fact that because historically you and the governor have been on the same page, and this time around it was a little different when it came to property tax relief. And why were you and the governor and the speaker not on the same page on this initially?
Well, initially, the speaker and I were not on the same page on this. He wanted to come in with a cap that would have greatly distorted the housing market and only ended up at the end of the day increasing your taxes, not lowering them. It was like New York, New Jersey, and California have tried. It does not work. So we didn't agree on that. But they did vote for a homestead exemption. If you go back and remember, they voted for the $100,000 homestead exemption during session. But they had other things in the bill that we couldn't agree to. The governor was pretty much silent the entire session, and we worked well together this session. And as you said, we don't not always agree, and we have our good disagreements behind closed doors, which I believe is what people really want us to do, work out our differences. People don't want to see us quarreling in public. But I was taken aback, quite frankly, Jack, on the first day of the first special session when the governor put on the call only compression. He wanted to spend every dollar of the 18 billion, roughly, in just compression, which would have been about a $750 tax cut for every homeowner. Our plan, which was 70% compression and 30% homestead exemption, is giving everyone about a $1,300 cut. If you live in the average home, you're going to get about a $1,300 cut in your property tax, school property taxes. Seniors will get a little bit more, $1,400 to $1,500. If you live in a $500,000 home, your cut's going to be about $3,000. And so there was a difference. And I was actually, again, taken aback when the governor came out and said, the House is the best plan. That's just wrong, Jack. Both of us had the exact money in the budget. The House was not the best plan when we started, because again, if we had done what the governor and the House wanted, every one of your listeners out there on the average $300,000 and some home would have gotten about $740. And under our plan, with the homestead included, they're going to get between $1,300 and $1,500, depending if they're over or under 65. So our senators were unanimous. You know, I had a press conference towards the end of session or in the special session. All 31 senators, Republicans and Democrats, stood behind me and said, "We're not going to do all compression. Why would we take $700 out of the pocket of homeowners and give it only, you know, to other areas when it's the homeowners who deserve and need the property tax relief?" So in terms of when the governor said that, quite frankly, I don't consider it an argument between us. I just couldn't let it stand. Our tax cut was better, and we're going to fight for it. And I appreciate the speaker in the last 7 to 10 days of this special session. We worked really well together. Again, they'd already voted on most of our package earlier. So we worked together. We got it solved. It was between the speaker and myself. The governor had said, he eventually said, well, I'll sign anything you send to me. So the speaker and I and Senator Betancourt and Will Metcalf, Representative Metcalf, we worked all that out, working night and day for about 7 days a few weeks ago.
I did have one other question on this area,
Sure.
and that was the governor and some conservatives advocated for putting the state on a path to gradually eliminate the school M&O property tax altogether. And I'm wondering now, is that door closed for good?
Well, it's just not possible, Jack. And I don't want to disappoint our listeners out there, but I'm going to just be honest. We can never totally 100% eliminate the school property tax, not 100%. Now, again, we're reducing it 41% this year, and that will be moving forward. It will be a 41% cut from where they are, and we'll continue to nibble away at that. But, you know, a government only has 3 ways of funding government, main 3 ways: sales tax, income tax, or property tax. Well, we're never going to have an income tax in this state as long as conservatives are in charge, and we put it in the Constitution to make it hard